Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to my channel, I Hate Rock Music. And today's video is going to be about a band that only put out a single. And sometimes they do that because some bands are so interesting that even though they only issued a single, they're worth talking about. In this case, a band called Distant Jim. And they sprung out of a band called Methuselah that put out a album in 1968, 69. And some of you might have come across the record. I came across it in cutout bins and it looked like a Christian rock album, and it kind of is. Abraham, Martin, and John being the title of it. But two of the members were from Methuselah. Craig Austin and Les Nichol were both in Methuselah, and Steve Chapman was the third member of the band, and he was in Coast Road Drive, and he was in Coast Road Drive with Les Nichol as well. So these guys all had a history with each other. Steve Chapman also spent some time in Iron Maiden, the legendary UK band Junior's Eyes, and also a band called Pandemonium. But they put together a trio in 1970 called Distant Jim, and it's really a great heavy record. I drool at the thought of a whole album by them. There's one song called Just a Little Bit, and features one of the only known performances I know of rampant belching. And so a lot of the tune has belching for lyrics, but it's a really cool song. Great riffs, great heavy riffs, um, very good recording. And Cosmorama is another one that starts out kind of slow and brooding, and then just pummels you with some really massive riffs and some great lead playing. So as far as Power Trio goes, they're really as good as they get, and it's really too bad they're so obscure, but they would be having only put out one single. And like I say, it's really too bad they didn't get a chance to do a whole album. There may be a whole album in the can somewhere sitting in a vault. We may or may not ever find out, but the single is definitely worth tracking down, although it's worth a lot of money now. Singles like this by bands like Distant Jim, these real rarities from the UK from the late 60s, early 70s. You used to be able to get them for a dime a dozen back in the 80s, but people really caught on to them, and so they go for big bucks now. And the Brown Acid series has been great, gathering a lot of obscure, hard and heavy rock bands from the late 60s, early 70s, but they focus mostly on U.S. bands, but occasionally they have UK bands as well and other European bands. But Distant Jim, well worth checking out, even though there's only one single. And I'm sure when you hear, if you like that heavy stuff from the late 60s and early 70s as much as I do, it's worth it just to hear that one single. And put out on a small label, I might add. And maybe someday a whole album will appear. It seems like even in this day and age when everything's being reissued, it still often takes 40 or 50 years for some of these rarities to surface. But the Distant Jim tunes are available on a couple of UK psychedelic and heavy rock uh, anthologies and collections, so they're out there if you want to get them. Um, and if you're really hardcore and you got a lot of money, maybe track down the original single. I think there's a few copies available on Discogs, but I think they're well over 800 or $1,000 at this point. But Distant Jim, like I say, I think they're noteworthy enough to talk about them, even though they have one single. And I'll probably be doing more videos on bands that manage to release one or two singles, because sometimes they're so good, like Distant Jim, that they're worth bringing to people's attention. And in this case, of course, all you have to do is go to the links below this video and check them out. And as I mentioned before, if you like that late 60s, early 70s heavy sound, they don't really get much better than Distant Jim, and an utter shame that we don't have more material by them. So check them out. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.